like 6 and 50. I mean, most people don't care because they just always put mine is drivers.
And then everyone gets so nervous. Sports, everyone gets nervous when their phone makes a sound.
Hey, you can't really use it. Right, you can't really use it. All right, let's try to start with the small one.
Okay.
All right.
Are we leaving hours or what do we do? How do we do?
No, I figure I'll talk through some and get you guys to talk, and then we'll figure out everybody's different approaches. Because that's where we learn the most is how different people approach things. And I feel like some people in the audience last time used like some of the automated systems, and I was real interested to see if any of them had some outputs and how they came out comparatively.
Okay.
Yeah, Roberta, was that?
Yeah.
All right, so Vienna Crest, back history, one, I own that property, but so I'll probably be biased on value, which is always a thing for a seller, right? But it also just is a Pulte vinyl box, real popular plant all over the Triangle, built in the early 2000s, that has 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath. One of the bedrooms is a baby bedroom, more like an office. And the most, I guess, tricky part of it, I think, is that it has the unfinished basement and how to talk through valuing that. And where you add or how much you add is just a discussion point. So, Thomas seems eager to talk. So
I was just very happy to see it was your personal property. So should I tell you in a breakdown how I came up with the value?
Yeah, your process, because that's probably the same process for some of these, but let's talk through that, because it'll be interesting, I think, to everybody, how we process
You can
it.
laugh.
I'm not gonna laugh because I didn't even do comps, so I can't laugh. I was like, I should get an assignment. But I have other things to share.
The amount of listings you ladies have is far better than mine.
I don't know about that.
Yeah,
No,
especially these two.
Yeah,
So you guys
definitely.
listing queens. So just bear with me when I come to my
You and I,
numbers.
you and I.
Yes.
I'm trying to
Yes.
my madness here.
So what I have looked at, I haven't seen any current comps in a neighborhood. That was the first thing I look for.
That's
right?
the hard part.
So I haven't. No, that's good. So I haven't seen anything. So what I have done, and again, my approach was, since there's nothing in a neighborhood, most buyers will look around in a 5-mile radius, maybe 8-mile radius to see for, if they're looking for something 1,400, 1,500 square feet, what could they find in Raleigh today, right? So I didn't see a whole lot of good comps, and I will tell you why, that I could find that would be something similar to the particular properties. What I looked at it, okay, so let's use another approach. Let's see what have sold recently in a vicinity, and I make adjustments. So while I find 8 or 10 properties, I only picked out 2 that I find to be compatible because I wanted to have something with no garage, and I wanted to have a square footage that is similar to the one there. Now, I have found 2 properties. And if I could read, that would be fantastic. So, I can't even see it, I'm sorry. One of them was built in 1994, other one was built in 2004. So the age has a little bit of a gap, okay? Both of them are sold. One was 1,336 square feet, a little bit smaller. Other one was 1,570 square feet, a little bit bigger, right? One have sold at 309, other has sold at 359. None of them had an unfinished basement. So what I have done some adjustments for the first one for $5,000 for the age. And the other one, since it was 2004, there is no adjustment, however it was slightly bigger. So I have taken some money off the top for the 359 one. I've taken a $10,000 deduction and I've given a $5,000 for the age. So what I came up with for my 2 comps was, in average, about the 330 range, okay, in average. Now, the discussion gonna be are 2 things. Both properties are sold, so I took it upon myself to see what was the appreciation for the last 6 months. How much was it? And what I came up with, it was exactly 5.2% taken from January 1st until today. So I have divided that by 2, which is 2.6%, right? So it's somewhat negligible, but it's still value, okay? So I also thought about the basement, right? The basement is not finished, so it's an ongoing argument and an ongoing conversation of how much does it worth. if you have to have a basement as far as construction cost, right? To me, it's very, very different than an appraisal might give you. Two completely different value. So I have only given $30 a square foot for an unfinished basement, and I came up with about an $18,000 value or $20,000 value. So not giving a whole lot of appreciation, given that product is, how would I say, somewhat simple, nothing that unique about it. I personally came up with the price at $349.9 after all value added and deducted.
Okay.
Alright.
You think completely off?
Huh?
Am I completely off?
Sharon probably likes that one.
I'll tell you what I think.
Okay, so basically, the first thing I always do, and I know it's not super meaningful, but the first thing I do is I go into MLS mapping, and I look and see what the MLS value is assigned to the property, which is not a whole lot different than like a Zillow, and that came out at $343. I found the same floor plan down the street in another neighborhood that has pool and tennis community, but no basement, and had a fenced yard for $315. That was reduced from $325 after 16 days on market. And it's not getting a bunch of showings because I looked to see what kind of showings it was getting. The next cheapest townhome in the zip code is $440,000, so I'm looking at supply and demand on that as well. And then there is also a 4-bedroom in Hampstead Crossing for $360. That's 90 days on market. There's one under contract, which is the same floor plan in Long Lake, which is down the street. So this is my stomping area, so I'm a little bit familiar with stuff around here. So Long Lake has the same floor plan, interior unit just like this one for $325 with 26 days on the market. Okay.
That's active? Okay.
No, sorry, under contract. I'm sorry, under
Okay.
contract. There's one in Cornerstone, which is the same square footage and has a 1-car garage that closed in April for $349. I'm not looking at the basement yet. This house, mapping-wise, is going to have a little bit of road noise, so I'm acknowledging that. And the next door house, which was a basement home, sold in November 2023 for $340 with new paint, new carpet, and a finished basement. Okay? So I am coming up with $335. So I would price it at $335 and let the market decide, because there's a pros and cons to the basement. If you need the basement because you want to finish it, or you want that storage, or you just want to play with it as an unfinished basement for a kid's stomping ground, pool table, whatever, that's great. But when you have a basement in a neighborhood like that, you have a deck that doesn't get downstairs. So some people might prefer not to have the basement and have a fenced backyard and be able to go in their backyard, and some people might prefer to have that basement or, and just have a deck that they overlook. So this one I felt like, because it's got the road noise and because it's questionable how interested people would be in the basement, I would price it at $335 in today's market and let the market decide if it's worth more.
Okay.
What did your comps say?
Well, what was your approach, Tina?
Yeah, well, I have questions, because Sharon's like, come speak on a panel about pricing. I was like, great, I missed the assignment that I was supposed to do this. Is everyone here, did they all do this?
I got them to fill out pricing sheets to say that they did, whether they did or not.
Okay. So they all got the assignment. I don't know where my pricing sheet went, but I came with a different opinion of what we were doing today, so. So I've got, what I had Kelly just print is, we have a call group pre-flight pricing checklist. So I'll give you sort of my mentality around it, because obviously.
That's always important.
Here's the thing. Who did the pricing on this? Raise your hand. So I would gather all of you came up with a different price than $349 to $335, yes? Okay, so there's 10 of us that raised our hands. I'm the seller on Vienna Crest, and I have 3 people that come and look at the property, sometimes one, Sharon. Let's say Sharon gets the repeat customer. Sharon gets a certain price, but if the customer had interviewed these two, they would have gotten $350 and $335, and maybe I would have gone in there and said $329 to whatever the price is. The point is this, and this is what I try to stress on my team. Sharon's gonna come up with her price, I'm gonna come up with a price, we're all gonna have a different price opinion. There is not one human that can tell me that there is a system that works, because you all have a different brain in your head. You have different strategies, different strengths, different weaknesses. Some of you are really good at saying, that house has got the right vibe, and I just know in my gut it's gonna sell for more, and I'm gonna price it higher because that's what I think. Or others might have that opinion, and so they might price it different. So I'll just take them through real quick what my checklist is. I'll give you guys this, so we could, I don't know what the easiest way is, I'm not techie, but the whole point is I want you guys to think about, you are going in there to give your market evaluation, right? It's not your price, it's the market. You're reading the tea leaves in the market, and that's what I always tell the sellers. I'm gonna read the tea leaves, but at the end of this presentation, Mr. Seller, when I present these comps, you, Mr. Seller, better come up with a value, because if you can't come up with a value after I present my comps, we've missed it, because I shouldn't be the only one reading these tea leaves, because the buyer that sits down, that walks in and says, oh my God, I love this house. What's the next thing a buyer does after they want to buy a house? What do? With who?
Their agent.
Their buyer's agent, their seller, whatever agent, an agent runs comps. So the agent and the buyer better come up with similar valuation that we have. So if at the end of my presentation, you can't tell me what we should price the house for, we've missed the boat. So that takes the pressure off of me to come up with the right price, and it puts the pressure back on the seller to pick the right price. Because I want the seller to be in the game. We're a team. If you hire Sharon, she's your teammate and getting this price sold. So I very much took the mentality that this is not my price, it's market price. Here's how I gathered the information, Mr. Seller. I'm your counsel, and I'm going to court to say this is what I believe it's worth based on the tea leaves. Does that make sense? So it takes the pressure off of us and puts it on them, because I've had sellers say, well, you're the boss, you're in charge, you're the agent, you tell me the price. Well, why should I be the only one with my neck on the line? Because you're just as responsible to this price as I am. But if you can't read the tea leaves, then no one can read the tea leaves. So just giving you guys that mentality, it took stress off me years ago, because I'm like, I could come up, we're all gonna have a different price. So who's right? It's just a guess. It's an educated guess, and that's what appraisers do, and they have guidelines. So the first thing on here, and I don't have my glasses.
Right, I'm not buying it either.
So my pre-flight checklist, I always fill this out before I go to property. So I say, what are the facts about, in this case we did 3404 Lovage Lane in Apex. So we said, okay, where are they moving to? How many upgrades? Low motivation. Does this seller have high motivation or low motivation? Do they absolutely need to sell? That changes the price. If the seller says, I have to go tomorrow, I gotta be out of this house, I'm not going for the fluff way up here price. I'm going for the bottom barrel price. I gotta get this seller to go away. So then I would say time frame to make the move, staying local or moving out of state, home improvements, have they been made since moving in? Have they added a fence or not? What are the negatives? What are the things they hate about the property that other sellers are gonna hate? This backs up to a road. Well, I don't know if it'll sell, it backs up to a road. Well, you bought it. Why did you buy it? Well, because I got a good deal on it. Okay, then we're gonna probably, are there homeowners in all of these homes backing up to the road? Yes. Okay, so they all bought it, but they probably got discounted lot prices, right? So if you got a discount, we're probably gonna have to give a discount. Makes sense? Makes sense. Okay, good. And then we go into the subject property. It's in Deer Creek, it's a main floor, it's got second floor master, it's 3 years old, it's all the subject matter of the property. Then we've got the opinions of value from all the top sites. So who has gone on the listing and they go, well, Realtor.com said, Zillow said. So the goal here for me is to let them have confusion that all these sites are pretty much another opinion. So I actually list for them, Realtor.com said this one was $541,800. Zillow said $597,500. Redfin said $660,000. Okay, sold to Redfin. RPR said $647,000, and Trulia said $602,000. So this is all of these sites that consumers are on. So do you see, Mr. Seller, how confusing it could be to a consumer that they're here on these sites looking at all these values? So they might think we're worth $602,000, but gosh, Realtor.com says $541,000. What if the buyer only looked at Realtor.com? What if the seller only looked at Zillow? So the seller's coming to you saying what Zillow said, but what about Redfin? Redfin said. So I want to go back with more data to the seller to say, look, you could want what you want, but this is what the consumers have out there. And then the other thing would be the neighborhood comps. So we always start, like you said, in the neighborhood, there were no comps for this one. So I'm gonna go, well, no comps for this one. Now let me run numbers of the whole area. Where is this property, Raleigh?
Yeah, northwest.
Northwest. So I'm gonna look at that northwest sector. Let's look at all of it between, I don't know, this is 350, let's say 325 and 350. I'll probably look at everything between 325 and 350. My goal is to strategically place the home in the market to sell and be the clear choice in the market. So if I look at everything, I go, if I were buying this home today and I had $325,000 to $350,000 in my pocket, or even $375,000, would this be a great value or not? And then I'm following my gut through that questionnaire, I guess, in my mind, and I'm seeing what buyers can get. In this case, they got a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, and I'm seeing, gosh, does my home fall within this range? And then I look at my pending and contingents, and then I drill deeper now. How do we stack up? Basement or no basement? First floor or no first floor? And then finally, I'm giving them the clear choice range, which is the most aggressive price. We want to be number one on this list. If we're between 325 and 350, and I take a stack of homes like this, the clear choice is the one at the top. And anytime I go to the store, I don't know about you guys, I'm cheap. I start at the clearance rack, don't you? Let me see what I can get for a deal. So does the buyer. Let me see what I can get for a deal. So I'm going to start at the cheapest price, and then I'm going to work my way up. When you look on MLS, between 325 and 350, I want my home to rank in that top 5 of the range, whatever the range is. Say it's a $50,000 swing. I want my home to be a clear choice. So I want to push it up to that top 5. So I actually give the seller a visual, and I'll highlight the middle, the bottom, and the top of the range. And I'll say, well, Mr. Seller, you want 350. That puts us here at the bottom of the list, meaning we're kind of the full priced option here, and there are other homes ahead of us. So I just wanted to go more psychology of it, because I have no clue what
on what she was
Crest is
saying.
talking. Yeah,
I want to piggyback on what she was saying as well. Is like, it's all about, first of all, creating a price that brings in an offer,
yes.
right?
Yes.
And your house needs to be the best choice at a given time for the potential buyer of that home.
Yes.
Sometimes they're just not going to be. Sometimes there's going to be a better deal, and you can walk into that seller and say, "Listen, this one's got to sell first. Like this one is just gonna beat us all day long, and we don't want to sell it for that low. So we're going to price it. We're going to go ahead and price it here. Once this one sells, then we should be the next one in line."
Yeah.
The other thing I did is, because I know the Leesville schools are really important, so I looked outside of the Leesville schools, but then I really gave heavy emphasis to what was available in the Leesville school district for that particular house.
Yep.
What'd you get?
Yeah.
Higher, of course. But my rationale was that I have 12 comps in 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 7. I always put those all together because they're Leesville high based. So in this 1,
But
3.
you could just do Leesville High School.
I could, but that's not the way I function on my MLS.
Okay.
For whatever reason, we all have different ways.
Yeah.
We enter in zips. We used to have those beautiful 1, 2s, 5s, 10s, 15s that they've messed us up by eliminating. But when I went in, because I again know the product very well, I knew that there were 2 on Silhouette Place that are identical models, about 2 years newer, that had gone at $335, $330. There, and that's Long Lake. Clasera, is right in the same little cul-de-sac of that little Long Lake neighborhood with the same floor plans. That one went at $355, no basements, same exact stuff. And then there was definitely one in Delta Ridge that was $325, $320s, $320. So I could find one at $315. I missed whatever this one was because I guess I wasn't looking maybe at this lower end, and I didn't go this high in footage either. It's 1570 for my bad writing. But I kept seeing consistently in these 12 comps from about $320 to $330, throwing out some highs and some lows without a basement. So then when I was adding 20 to 30, because of the uniqueness, if someone wants a basement and they cannot find one, and there are rare, there's like 4 on this one side of the neighborhood, and some are finished and some aren't. So I was kind of in a gradient of, yes, 350 is like that, hey, Mr. Seller, I think you'll get the most attention at that number, but it'd be hard, I think, if I show them these, that they're gonna justify that they be at 350 when they've got this unique factor of the basement no one else has, and some people got as much as 350 without having it at all. So then I was kind of thinking that we'd be 340, sell it fast, 350 and kind of a mid-range, and 360 being the high that I could justify if someone did not need a fast sale, and I usually might tell them, I might test the market. If it's tip top, market ready, there. If not, then I'd be like,
Yeah.
you kind of still feel 2002-ish, let's get down here.
And I was
Because I will say that makes a big, big difference. Who's got granite, who's got hardwoods throughout. I can tell you over the years of selling that Glenwood corridor, the ones that had carpet in the family room, sat. And I get ones, people couldn't sell, and I'm like, guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go throw in today at BLVP, but back then it was like some laminate, and I'm gonna go wall to wall on the first floor, and magically, boom, the house would sell. So it's just kind of knowing what those levers to pull would be.
I have a question. So this one was 1407, and does that say 690?
It does.
Okay, so the total, is that the basement?
Yes.
So I was always taught too, and this could be completely wrong, but I wanted to see if the numbers pan out. So we're adding those, correct? Right, for
No.
total? Or that's part of the basement? Is the house just 1407?
Yes.
And then, okay,
The basement's unfinished.
so what they would say, okay, so let's say what did you get, Sharon? 340. Let's just say 340 divided by 1407 is 241 a foot.
Mhm.
So then I remember talking to an appraiser, and he said take the 693. I'm just seeing if this works. I'm old now, and I haven't sold a house in 3 years, so bear with me. Divide by 2. So
That's when it's
340.
finished.
50%.
With 50%
It
that
wasn't
was
finished.
correct.
That's fine. Okay, because I'm like,
Unfinished.
why are we not doing that? Okay,
Yeah,
never mind.
it's
Ignore me.
unfinished, so then you
Ignore me.
kind of, it really isolates the value down to very little because the buyer can't
Correct.
see it as price per square foot stuff.
Okay, good.
And I just listed a villa in Hazen Tree that has a huge unfinished basement on a 2,700 square foot house. So my price per square foot looks way out of whack compared to everything else.
Yeah.
But it's because of the premium law on top of a basement that nobody can see that square footage on those little tallies.
So I was pricing based on the condition that I saw in the MLS today, not based on the fact that Sharon is gonna go in there and make it pretty.
Right, right.
It was
And I should have
based-
qualified, like, I always look at like premium pricing, like what's market ready. Because my gig is make it market ready.
Yes, it is.
And
Yeah.
also correct.
Am I
Yeah, we're all in the market.
Yes, we're on the ballpark.
I'm still gonna hit 340 or 350.
Yeah,
If the market says it's worth it.
You're gonna get multiple offers that might drive it up above.
Right, right. There's a bunch of strategies to all of that. So what did you guys think?
I have 340.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Did everybody get 340? Did every single person?
320 to
A little bit.
340. Yeah. And then it just
That
depends
means
on the
I get the
motivation.
listing.
You did.
But I get it when you don't sell it.
But most of them sell because he's gonna beat them up on the price week after week until it drops.
All right, did everybody fill out their pricing? You should have already, and throw it in this little bucket with your name on it so you can get a prize? Yes, no, maybe?
I have a question.
Okay.
Just, I might have missed it because I was taking notes furiously. When you were doing that math for the basement, you know, was that for the unfinished price or is that for a finished basement?
Finish. So what the methodology was, it didn't always work, but let's say you had a 3,000 square foot house and you had another 1,000 in the basement. So let's say it was total 4,000 finished, but 1,000 of it was in the basement. What we would do is take half value. So we would chop the basement into I would take 500 square feet and add it to the top.
And make it a 3,500 square foot house
Exactly.
that you compare it to.
Below ground.
Correct, because the below grade sometimes has about half value because it's not as, I mean, I think it's usable, it's way more valuable than a third floor, because you're right, you're going down one flight of stairs versus two. So I always thought even third floor, don't you think is worth even less?
Well, Tim McNamara always told me main 2 levels worth about the same because we have a lot of 2 stories.
Yeah,
Versus a ranch is gonna sell for more, obviously. But if it's a basement or a third floor, he kind of did the or, it was about half.
yeah.
And those are again, old school agent, old school rules.
Old school rules, but I
And
love those
the
old
COVID
rules.
effect seemed to be that everybody just threw all the square footage in one bucket and
Correct.
called it a price per square foot. But as the market changes, and we're starting to see that delineation, where if you saw 4,000 square feet on 2 floors versus across 3 or 4 floors, you've got to start mentally saying it's gonna feel smaller because it's more chopped up, and it's gonna usually have less value. Now, something like inside the belt line, where so much driver on the land price, maybe not as much of an effect, but it's taking all those factors into consideration, for sure.
And I had an unfinished basement in a house I have under contract right now, and so I reached out to Warren Sumner, who's an appraiser, and just said, hey, give me your take on this, and he said generically, and this is a nice basement, but it's unfinished, he said 20 to 30% of the value, which I didn't even quite go that high because it was in a 55 and up community, and I felt like the basement was going to be a negative to most people looking out there. But just so you guys know, 20 to 30% that's unfinished is what he said. I didn't even run those numbers with yours, just because
It's small.
I just was, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
move on.
Yeah. Because that's the other part is sometimes a small basement on a small product is not got a high kicker,
Yeah.
but a big basement on a big product
Yeah.
could have a high kicker because
Exactly.
it's a lot of space they can fit in.
And
Yeah.
the level of finish. If
Right.
It's like amazing and you're like, oh my god, I love it down here.
Right.
And
yeah.
plumbing too, like is it plumbed for a
A
bathroom down
bathroom
there?
and another kitchen, can you build a whole
Yeah.
mother-in-law suite down there? That could become very important in today's market.
Exactly.
Great.
All right, let's move on to Salem Village. Is that cool?
Oh, yay.
Sure.
I'll go, I'm gonna go first this time.
All right.
Okay? I thought this one was a lot easier because there's a lot more comps.
Yes.
So the MLS number came back for me at 891. I noted that this one had dark cabinets and floors compared to some of the comps.
It doesn't now, but that doesn't
Okay,
matter.
but I'm looking at what you showed me.
I know.
I mean, all I got is the pictures that are there.
That's all you know.
So based on the way it looks today, Sharon.
Yeah.
or
I don't
not
own that
today,
house, I just know the owners and they hired my painter to paint all that stuff.
I
But
noted
go ahead.
that Apex Friendship High School is capped, so that's kind of relevant
Oh.
because you're probably going to sell to somebody who's already in that school district, and so it could, affect, that area sells real hot anyway, but. Active pending closed 2024, one of them sold really high, so I took that one off my list, it was over $1 million. I had another one that was like a ranch, I took that one off the list because it was too small. The price per square foot for the same square footage in the neighborhood went from $235 to $255 a square foot. Because it was darker, and let's see, on the main floor, and has 200 square feet on the third floor, so part of the square footage is on the third floor. I took that into account. 1809 Flint Ridge showed more natural light, a little newer, quieter street, because this one's on a main cut through of the neighborhood, 44 days on market at the high side. I would preview Flint Ridge just to see how it stacks up, and I am pricing at $849.
And what'd you say MLS said?
MLS had $891. Ooh, I know. But I'm looking at dark cabinets and dark floors, and all the rest of the comps are showing super bright.
Bright,
So
right.
I'm
That's a
basing
big
it on
deal.
what I see today, and I'm thinking that I don't remember what I did on the price per square foot on that, but that's what I came up with. What you got?
Very good.
Yeah.
Everybody listening?
Thomas has something to say.
Whatever she said is 100% correct.
You didn't run the comps on this one?
I did.
Did you come up with the same number?
Oh, close, not quite.
Okay.
But I like to add something to it,
Okay.
right?
So
And
you're
I think
right,
all of
but-
us are always going to be in a similar range because you look at the same thing. So in Apex, because I do a lot of business in Apex, and I happen to see the last 3 houses they have sold, right? I'm going to put a twist to the valuation. Do you know which direction your house is facing?
No.
Oh, right, that's true, that's important out there. Does mine face east? Does this face east?
Well, we're going to get it in a second.
You missed that, you're not hired.
Damn it, but I knew the school was capped.
So the reason I want to make sure that you guys understand, because at some point of your career, maybe even today, you'll be working with cultural buyers. I have just gotten an email, I'm pretty sure all of you have, from Taylor Morrison. They are releasing new lots. It's not relevant to that, but I'm going to get to the point in a second. From Taylor Morrison, they're releasing lots. And not all the lot number was showing, and a lot premium, it specifically said east and north, right? There were no south-facing lots, nothing else. So I always have a lot of cultural buyers, and I know to certain culture, a preference is very, very, very strong to either east or north-facing, then west, and the south is a no.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's not
Some
a-
other culture, it is south,
Yeah.
east, west, and north is a no. So you need to know, in my opinion, in Apex, of what direction it is facing, right? So obviously comps are the comps, but I know that when I have a listing in Apex or Morrisville, if I put in where it's facing, I will have multiple offers regardless of the condition or color of cabinets. Now, are you recording this? So I cannot say
We
what I'm
can
about to
edit.
say. I can't say that because that would be not good.
Then don't
So
say it.
there
Don't
are,
say it.
so there are colleagues of ours who will basically solely sell a property based on facing and regardless of condition. That's another twist. I'm going to leave it at that. So in my opinion, I agree with the comps. And again, comps are the comps. If it is facing the right direction, in my opinion, and since I have seen the other houses, I think my pricing would be $8.99.
But those are the little
Is it facing
nuggets
the
of
right
info that people
What if
don't
it's
know.
not?
And then
Not sure.
Thomas might get the listing
Oh.
from the seller because of that one nugget, you know, if there's a miss there, because that's the tribal knowledge that you have to extract from somebody who's been in business 20 plus years.
He also said he would do $8.49 if it wasn't facing
If
the
it's
right
south,
direction.
yeah, if it's south facing,
Yeah,
for
no, I
example,
agree.
in that location, I would go with a lower price, and there is no question.
Yeah.
Now, and the reason is because a buyer pool, because of the schools, as she mentioned, are much, much larger, because the schools are very, very highly rated,
Yep.
right? So if a house is facing south, right, I think that buyer pool goes away. So basically 50% of your buyers are gone in that particular area, that particular neighborhood, right? And again, as you guys know, this is not about who's right or wrong. It's pick up nuggets from our conversation to understand why we're looking at things where and how. Please, you have a question, yes?
So, I've come across the same exact situations with multiple offers for certain direction-facing houses. Would you get a better offer, per se, maybe higher cash offers, if you lower that down from $8.99 and come closer to the middle between $8.50 and $900 to like $8.75 and drive more offers into the situation?
So answer this all depends. So I think it's a very good question, right? In my opinion, it's only my opinion, I know my colleagues in that area, right? Price will not be a concern if there is not another east or north facing house on the market. And currently there isn't.
So you
Right.
could potentially get the same.
So basically you would get a
offers.
premium, right? Because what I have seen, for example, even if I'm pricing a little bit higher, you will get multiple offers at the scale or maybe just slightly above, right? What I have seen, however, maybe it's my own experience, if I'm pricing a little bit lower, right, depending where it is, there is no guarantee you're gonna make up that price difference. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So to me, $8.99 would be a top of the price point if everything lines up, given that you still have no competition, given that it's a right facing. So to me, again, if you want to have a range, $8.75 to $8.99, right? My opinion. But there are other buyers than cultural buyers in Apex. So everything these ladies have said is 100% right? But I just wanted to add that part to it because I also looking at something different.
I think it's important to, what's it called, under promise and over deliver. So you never wanna underprice based on the assumption that you're gonna get multiple offers, because then your seller is gonna be
Because if you don't, then
very disappointed.
yes.
So it's better to say, if we got an offer at $8.49, you know, and of course I'm talking to the seller too, we talked about that last week, right? I'm not gonna ask them, one of the first questions I'm gonna ask them is what they think their house is worth, so I can get an idea of where their head is at. But if we get an offer for $8.49, are you going to be happy? I actually had a client in, this was happening kind of at the end of COVID, where, you know, it's like comps all day long are 700. If you price it at 700, we might get 800. This was back in the day when you would get 100 grand over, right? So they didn't put their house on the market for 6 more months. They had a pool. They waited till the end of the summer to put their house on the market for 700, and they were getting lots of 700 offers, and they weren't taking them because they, in their mind,
Thought we were getting 800.
getting 800, except for that was 6 months ago. So finally, I did something I've never done before, which is I raised the price of the house. I said, well, if you're not, we're wasting people's time if you're not going to take an offer here. So let's raise it up to 800. We raised it up to 800, and it sold for, I think, maybe 800. It took a few weeks, but it sold for 800,000. Isn't that crazy?
It is so interesting.
We
Isn't
did
that-
that in New Hill one time, and we raised the price and it sold. Because we touched a different buyer
Yeah.
that was, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ellsworth.
With the third floor piece in mind, I would just say depending on the market temperatures.
Yes.
I think the old listing, for whatever reason, because it was new construction when they bought it, only showed like 200, but it really is
Huge.
It is full, like guest room,
Oh.
bathroom, it had a 5th bathroom. So that's something else like
Oh.
none of these comps had. They have about 3 and 4 bathrooms, but it had a 5th bathroom on that 3rd floor as a whole like
It shows
thing.
5 bedrooms.
You know, it does say 5 bathrooms, and I didn't really take that into consideration. I was just sort of looking at maybe 3,400 square feet on the main floor,
Mhm.
and then this extra 200. So I was giving more weight to those ones that were similar
Yeah.
square footage.
So where I was coming up maybe to the 850 to 875, but then I put another 15-20 grand in for the 5th bathroom because it is notable. And a homeowner who has that and nobody else on their street does is going to know they got it, and they're going to want you to acknowledge they got it and put a value on it. I personally knew, which again I kind of didn't mean to hide those cards, but I knew that they were a little bit more updated. They really take care of their homes nicely. So in my mind, we were like 885, 890. So certainly once I'm there, I might as well press to the 899, right? Because I think it is about buckets. It's like sometimes people are like, oh, shouldn't I be 853? And I'm like, come on, y'all. 850 or 875. Rarely do I do a 859.9. And if I do, it's because I know it needs to be 850. And then the seller needs to test the waters just a little higher to make them feel good because they're going to be mad at me if I tell them 850. But that short period of time that I give them to be there and test it, if it doesn't sell, then I've got lower change to make 10 grand than make a 25 grand if I, said, hey, you got a price here, here, and here. So kind of temperament all of that with where your strategy is and where you're going next if you don't feel they're pricing it right the first time to get them closer to where you want them to be.
Do you think it's true? I used to know that if you price it like, let's say 853.5 or 853.100, that was a kind of a message to the agent population that the seller is not negotiable. Like that's,
Interesting.
Yeah, I
that
agree.
used to be, right? Did you
Yeah,
hear
I
that?
No, I agree with that.
That was
I
like,
mean,
we
if
got
you're
it down to
nickel
the
and diming
penny.
on the list
Right,
price.
right. And I used to list homes like that where I knew the seller could, this was during, short sales and stuff. It was like, nope, it's
This is the exact number.
571.
And we don't
that
foreclose.
means, right, and that means don't bring me an offer under this because this is the bottom line. So that was, if you see that, that could also be a really old agent, 20
Yeah.
years in the business, that was the mentality back then.
So I get crazy offers where they'll be like
Yeah, I do too. It's
517, 868, and I'm like, something in that is lucky numbers.
It's
for
a
them.
lucky number,
Yes.
yeah.
And we
that's
just
what
counter
it
back
is.
like, no,
Yeah.
525.
Yeah.
We're not playing the lucky numbers game.
May I add?
Yeah.
When you see a listing price, specifically Cary, Apex, or Morrisville, a lot of the house is gonna be 788, 888, or 799, 888. Whenever you write that offer, make sure that offer will have the 3 8s.
88.
Oh, I like that
Yes.
advice. I've never done that
That's
before.
good.
I
It's
like
a big
that.
lucky number.
No
thing.
matter what
That
the
culture.
offer is, make sure you have the 3 8s in the back.
I love it.
Because there is a
Makes me
reason
learn something.
why they actually, since we're recording, I cannot tell you why, but let's just make sure that you basically follow that lucky number code.
Yeah.
Lucky number.
Mostly.
Do you
yes.
play
And I think anywhere though that you see
But
that,
I
because
think
it's
if you see something, like something makes you pause and think, I
Right.
wonder why they did that.
and you
But
can
you have
ask.
to
And you might
remember-
ask around.
The buyer pool in certain areas, because there's a different concentration of people in certain areas, as you guys know, right? When you look at a cultural buyer, right, I mean focusing on what? Mostly schools. So when in a good school district, right, and you have the 888, for example, Chapel Hill would be a very, very good example. Chapel Hill actually have phenomenal schools, and you're gonna see the same thing as you see in Apex, right? So just making sure you pay attention to that.
And I would just say, the one comment about, hey, the school was capped, if I'm only looking at the last 3 to 6 months of comps, it was capped then too, and those are the comps. So
Yes.
I
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
not throw that in as hard,
Yeah.
you know.
I agree with that.
And you guys might have noticed in that neighborhood, which you guys mentioned, there was a 1.1 million.
Yeah.
So you do need to be aware that some neighborhoods have sections and subsections. So they have an estate subsection in that neighborhood, and the big, like, ring a bell is they've got 3-car garages on all that. So once you see saw that, you know they're all million plus on that section, and a little bit beefier lots. So that's where you wouldn't necessarily rely on those comps. But a person not in that section who's got similar square footage is going to say, oh, well, shut my house. If I've got everything they've got but the 3rd car garage. That's 1.1. What you going to subtract for that garage? 30 grand? you know, and you're like, oh, it doesn't quite work that way. Let me throw a little zinger in, because I happened to be talking to these people the other day about their house, and that now the wife never liked it, now she loves it. The reason she loves it is they put a pool in the backyard, and he sent me a picture of it. So what do you guys think on a house of this range in Apex? You would add, when it's already, this is the key also, thinking it's already the higher end of the regular section. Because if you were the lower end, you might could add a little bit more, right? But anyway, what do you guys think?
It's a really nice pool.
It's well done.
Really
Yeah,
nice
it's a
hardscape
beautiful
and
picture.
everything. I might give him 35, 40.
Okay, what would you give?
100.
I think, I was gonna say I had 100 on my
Mm.
figure.
That's
Only because to put in a pool today,
It's
you can't put it in 100, it's 200.
Yes.
Mhm.
Even
But
like
is the
a,
appraiser gonna give you that 100
it
back?
doesn't matter.
Because they're gonna pay cash?
They're gonna pay.
They're
Because
gonna
they're
get
have
a
the money
big
to have.
deposit and pay a big
Big
difference.
deposit,
I was
yeah,
gonna say 75 only
Yeah.
because it was the upper end of its scale,
Yeah,
and it was a 2-car
correct.
versus 100. But generally, I would think we are seeing in certain scale of homes and newer polished homes.
It's because it's such an anomaly. It's hard to find. We don't have pools in every house in North Carolina like we do in other states, where they're a dime a dozen. So it's like to find one to alleviate the stress. To me, I would market it that way and say this pool will cost you this much money and this much time, and basically like that is going to be something that most people don't want to go through. They don't have the vision for it, nor do they have the cash later, and they can finance it in the deal.
And
Yes.
So
seasonally, starting on the front end of the
Yeah.
season
Yeah,
versus
definitely.
selling it in winter time gives you more
Correct.
value
Yeah.
too.
And yeah, if you have a pool right now, you are money.
Yeah.
100%.
You are money.
Do you
Yeah.
change that value based on how nice the pool is? I mean, because sometimes it's
Just a pool.
Yes.
Yes.
If it's like a concrete pool with like a liner and it has literally a 4-foot
Skirt.
and you just know, like it doesn't have the appeal.
Yeah.
You're like, it's a hole in the ground with water in it. I might give it 35 then, but if it's like a
Okay.
really nice pool, well
And
done.
it's new.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah,
new pool,
newer.
that matters.
Or just it's got lush, even if it's older, but it has like beautiful surroundings and lush landscaping. You just know that you just want to not leave the yard.
Yes.
That sells the house, because what sells houses? What is a buyer going to buy? Emotions. Thank you. That's what you're selling, is the emotion. That's why Sharon elevates all her homes to make sure they're flipped nicely.
Sure.
That's my thing too. I always went in and paint and carpet, give them the jewels, the light fixtures. Those things are so inexpensive to do, but they create the emotion. And I want buyers to fall in love. And when love is in the air,
Money.
offers are on the paper,
Yes.
right?
Well, and that's when you get them to
Money
want to
is a
compete
people.
for it too, right? Or you get them the feeling of, I shouldn't say this, but I'm quite a poker player, and make them feel like, I never say I've got an offer if I don't, but I may or may not have one
Yeah.
coming in today because someone else showed a lot of interest. And
Exactly.
boom, they compete with themselves and add another
She's a
50
poker
grand.
player.
Laurel Ferd, we'll go to that one next.
Can't wait.
Why are you looking at me?
Because you
You
did
did
your
your
homework.
Your turn.
What
I'm
did
not
you say?
curious what you're gonna say about this one. I thought it was harder.
It was
So-
in your text and everything, you just
Yes,
missed it.
that's why I'm letting you go first.
Oh, good.
That was like a screenshot with the bullet points of the house. And
I should have texted. I know. Should have said, hey, dum-dum.
So
Sure,
full
your homework.
disclosure, I had the hardest time with this particular
too.
property. And there are a couple of reasons. Number one, it is in a neighborhood which this is one of the smallest houses. So price per square footage doesn't really apply because everything else is gigantic, right? Secondly, it
Was it
has
2650? I want to write down the specs, I just didn't have it right on top.
It is
2789.
2789, built in 1995.
Okay. So about 28.
Well, they also say this is the least amount of time I spent on this, just because I.
First.
So,
I love it. He's like, I don't want to play anymore.
okay. Just a full disclosure.
That's
I
way
think
more.
the other ones I spent time on. This one I spent the least amount of time. So again, everybody can see the comps in a neighborhood. There are 2 active sales, 3 sold in 2024. But again, all of these houses are 1.2 million, 937, 975. That was one actually sold at 635 at 3,500 square feet. So I took that one out. Even if I took the lowest and highest, typically when you have a lot of comps, I'm still not getting anything because the houses are too big and way too expensive, right? So I completely disregarded the neighborhood for comps.
I
You
do
can you can go down on a road that if that is something at 3,000 square feet or 2,500 square feet, you can start making adjustments for bedrooms, bedroom, lot size, whatever that might be, right? But I felt like that in this case, that neighborhood wasn't the right neighborhood to do it in, because when you walk in a 3,500 square feet house versus a 2,700 square feet house, it's a completely different market. It's not even the same conversation. Maybe on paper you can make adjustments. When a buyer moves in, they're going to be looking at square footage. It's a tiny little box versus a nice, beautiful estate home. So what I have looked at is what is on the market currently in Wake Forest in general. How many houses are for sale? How many have sold and what they sold for? And I only find one house that is similar to the one on paper. That particular house was built in 2006. It is a 3-car garage, 1 acre lot, 3,000 square feet. 1 acre lot? No?
At least an acre, I'm
Five,
sure.
yeah. 3,000 square feet on the market for 714. Okay. Okay. The ones that actually I have found, which I find 8, but truly I think there are 7 personally. They are very, very similar. However, what I also have seen that the prices where they are listing when they are selling, it's lower. So most of the houses are not selling at asking price, or if it's selling slightly above asking price, it's within 2%. So to me, pricing would be very, very important in this house, because some houses don't get offers and buyers negotiate over half of them. 3 other ones out of the 6, they had multiple offers and they sold 10 to 20K above asking, which is negligible in my opinion. So what also somewhat worried me in the comps I have pulled, that the average days on the market that was sold was 28. So houses are not flying off the market, right? The ones, however, have gotten multiple offers above asking are 2 days, 4 days, and 6 days. So pricing, I think, for this particular house is going to be more vital than the 2 other ones we have talked about. Now, you get, where's the drum roll? Anybody have a drum roll? The second thing I have struggled with.
He's like,
The second thing I have struggled with is this particular house have 2.5 acres, right? The currently active listing have bigger acreage, but again, without seeing a property, it's very, very tough, because I have seen houses, all of you have, when a builder in the 1990s cleared 30 feet from a house, and you have 2 acres that nobody did anything with, right? So what is the value when you can't even see a deal running because it's so heavily wooded, versus somebody cleared out an acre, beautifully landscaped it, it had a nice fence, nice landscaping. So those are all things I don't know how to price.
Right.
Correct. So to me, it might surprise you, just because I do sell quite a few homes in Wake Forest as well, I would give it a range depending what it is, and what I came up with is between 625 and 675, depending on what's in the house and what is outside. But I couldn't quite pinpoint a price versus a range.
okay. All right, so the MLS number for this one when I checked was 705. I looked to see that they had paid $588 in a COVID market in 2021, which was well over the asking price when they bought it. I also did not like the comps within the neighborhood, although I do think it's always good to be the smallest house in the neighborhood. I think that that's a huge plus, and so that gives a little bit of value.
A little oomph to it.
Yeah, when I searched though, I searched area 98, US 1, Purnell, and Stony Hill. So I find that not all Wake Forest is the same. The people who stay on the east side is different than the
West
people
of
who go to the
Capitol
west.
versus East Capitol.
So I tightened it under there. I only looked under 800,000, at least an acre, only a 2-car garage because I didn't want to compete with houses with a 3-car garage. 27587. There were 18 active pending sold for 2024. Okay. I had one on Thompson Mill Road, which is the same neighborhood, but it's a busy street. Sold for $635 with 3,500 square feet in February. And then I looked at 7701 Matherly, which sold for $635 in 4 days. And the pictures looked really good. It was the same exact square footage, or close. and same age. And then I also was looking at what was active. I see one right here, 3,000 square feet, 9 days on the market for $650, 1.22 acre. I see another one that is, oh, that one's Granville County, so I don't want to count that one, and that one's Granville County. Okay, so I'm only gonna look at Wake County as well, right? And so my
Wake Forest does.
yeah. So I actually come in low again at 630 to 650 on my price point, and again, sort of, you know, and again, Sharon, I'm looking at the existing pictures in the house, which were, you know, okay. I don't find that the extra acreage really gives a lot, unless it's just like a really killer level, huge lot. If it's just like a bunch of trees going down a hill, you know, that doesn't mean anything to me.
That's awesome.
What you got, Sharon?
Ladies.
I kind of had a lot of those same comps. I had 3 that I looked at were active, was Rockhind, Bowtie, and Malden all on the west side. They were all like 2005, 2006, so a little chunk newer, and they were 3,000 to 3,400, but 3,000 and 3,100, so not that much bigger. In 38 days, 55 days, 52, not sold at 7, 7, and 715, or 715, 77. So I knew newer, a little chunk bigger, and I did an acre minimum. We'd be under 7, so that was like a starting clue check. Like I said, within neighborhood, I didn't see anything strong. So then I looked at Matherly under contract because it was a 95 and about 2,600 square feet. Went under contract in 4 days at 619. Scaled it up a little bit because it's a little couple more hundred square feet, but that one was like 245 a square foot. And then I had one called Grayson Creek that was 91, was 2,650. 2 days on the market at 600. Again, scaling up a little bit and a little bit of age, so that was 234 a foot. So those made me feel like probably 630 to 650, kind of this. But then when I looked at pendings, and I think pendings are a really good way to look because it's what's currently just, in theory, in the last 30 days, someone bought and moved through. Because I do think seasonality wise, like if you look at something back in December, especially January, we had a little bit of a tight market and things were a little rough. And now the last couple months, they've gotten a little looser, a little bit more competitive. This Darmstadt, Coates Worth Downs, I've sold a couple houses in there, so I knew the street. It's a 94, 3,000 square feet, sold in 9 days with 650. I feel the neighborhood, and look, they're not brick and nice like this. There's a little inferior, a little extra lot. And a little bit more square footage. So I felt like if that one went in 9 days at 650, I might could justify a little higher than 650 in today's market. Clear Springs was 91, 2,700 square feet, took 50 days, but was 644. What'd you say?
I just have a quick, I'm showing Darmstadt is pending right now. Do you?
I'm going over pendings.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing. I'm saying that's exactly where the market's moving. Prices that actually yielded. I did pull in Sunflower Meadows and Kim in Place, even though I think that has a Granville County background, only because I have found, again, COVID effect. Sometimes it hasn't really affected, and honestly, it wasn't negative at all. It was 2,480 square feet, sold in 8 days for 650. Again, smaller and even out of county, although a little newer. And Stony Bend, I got Sandy Brook Lane was 2,000 build, 33, I was 3,400 at 700. So my kind of gauge kept saying 650, 650, but it didn't mean if I went in there and saw it was great and with the 2.5 acres that I couldn't even justify kind of 660 to 670, only because when I look at what's available, everything else is 7 to 715, and this one might fit somebody in that 650 to 700 just right if it's in great shape. And it had, like I said, 2.5 acres of brick, and it's the baby of a nicer neighborhood.
Right.
So I justified swinging a little higher based on pendings and what I saw available to a buyer. Because even though we say 2.5 acres may not register much, and I've had appraisers say that anything over an acre, unless you can lop it off and sell it as a lot, it really doesn't add a lot of value. I do think some out-of-staters come in. And when they think I want 2 acres, 3 acres, 5 acres, and we just don't have a lot of that. We got a lot of 0.92s, a lot of 0.69s. That if you get something in a under $1 million price range, and even under 750, and have the 2.5 and look pretty good, it might go pretty hot. So that's just a discussion point that I bring in.
I think that's like the candy, you know, it's like what's the jewel that offsets
Right, what
this
makes that
property?
stand out?
Because if you got rid of this and put it on a half an acre, that number's not gonna be, it's not gonna be as attractive. So that it does, in my mind, it brings value. And I always went back and looked at, if you sold a 10-acre, 15-acre parcel, what did it go per acre? And then I would look at that per acre and I would say, okay, if this house is on a postage stamp or half an acre, you know, can I take that value? What is the house worth on a postage stamp? So let's get rid of the acreage. So I would focus on the house on a regular lot, and then I would add in value back for the acreage. Because I agree with you, if it's cleared, way more value. But if you have 2.5 acres versus 5 and it's all wooded, other than the glamour number of saying I have 5 acres,
Yes.
are they working acres? Are they cleared acres? Like, do I have to go out and clear, you know, 1,000 trees to get that beautiful feel?
Yes.
So,
Oh, yeah, no,
how dare
Maybe.
you? He's trying to go get a listing.
You gotta go to Sanford.
I have to go to
Fun.
Sanford to
Oh,
take
you're
my
going my
dog.
way. Yeah,
Police training.
fun,
Oh, not really.
fancy,
Stressful.
you're fancy.
Thank you, everybody. It's a
Yeah,
pleasure
thank
seeing you.
Hey,
I have to
thank
leave
you.
because I'm a doggy who needs behavior training.
Bad boy.
Yes. Bye.
Um,
Bye, Donna.
So,
He had German Shepherd.
I have a Belgian Malinois.
I had a Belgian. I'm German
Oh.
Shepherd now.
He's a German Shepherd with crack.
Yes, they are.
out of the audience who actually did the experiment, where'd you guys come up with?
Oh, yeah.
That's 650 then.
Yeah, 650, 650? Anybody way different for any reasons they could
I
think
had
of?
a range simply because I couldn't find a lot of photos.
Right.
And I don't like giving a price until I see
See the
what I'm
house.
looking at. 'Cause
Yes.
sometimes you're like, wow, this will be great. You go and you're like, this is a nightmare.
Right.
So.
And that's the hard part, is these weren't on the market, and that's why I didn't want you to be tainted toward what somebody else had priced it on, or how long it had been on the market. I wanted to kind of have something that had a little differential in different areas, in different price
I noticed
ranges.
the MLS didn't have the kitchen pictures of this one, but when I went into Google, I was able to
Find
find
some.
some.
Interesting. Yeah.
I have a question, how much more time did you?
We did an hour and a half, so nothing.
We did?
Yeah.
This is what we do.
So just a few more minutes, we want to talk
Well,
about.
I just wanna talk about pricing, because how many of you have a listing or had a listing and it sat on the market even though you went through this wonderful pricing strategy? Anybody should be, every hand in the room, or you're not selling real estate. So I wanna talk a little bit about, the next step, so you price the home, you list it, you bring it to market. Now you've had it on for, let's say, 2 weeks. We always use some metrics to kind of gather info, so I wanna hear from you ladies too.
Yep.
Let's say you had it on the market and people found value to come and look, but they never found value to buy. So you've got one scenario where you've got 10, 15 showings in a 2-week period and crickets. And then let's talk about the other scenario where you listed it, you got it ready, and you felt like you were getting ready for a party and nobody showed up. And now you've got 2 weeks and a seller that's mad at you because they're like, well, you're the realtor, where are the people? So now we got 2 scenarios, so I would love to hear from you ladies. Do you have a strategy? Because we sort of do, but mine was, you know, ever changing. What do you do in that scenario where you have a lot of showings and no offers, or no showings and no offers?
I always try to tell my sellers going in, especially in a really busy market, like if this house should sell in 2 weeks, because it's a really busy market, then I ask them to not be distracted by all of the showings and all of the great feedback, because if you don't have an offer and you should have an offer, then there's probably something that needs to be adjusted. And so a lot of times in that kind of market where you are also more likely to push the price a little bit because it's really competitive, we'll have a plan in place that says, okay, we're gonna try 665 right now, but if in a couple of weeks we don't have an offer, even if we have people who are giving us great feedback, we're gonna pop it down to maybe 650, right? And then see what happens with that. If I'm not getting any showings at all, I guess it kind of depends on the house. You know, especially if you get out yonder, right? When you get a little bit more rural, you might get a little bit less activity in general. So I'm gonna try to look at the average days on market. I'm finding 30 to 60 days in a lot of areas around here right now. So for that reason, I might not be making a quick reaction based on that, because it really only takes one buyer. And especially if there's a lot of new construction and there's a lot of other competition, if you're not just giving your house away and you're just trying to get a fair price, it just might take some time.
What about you?
Yeah, I'm big about talking to people about the first 2 weekends, because I always launch for a weekend. So by the time we've had 2 weekends, we're usually somewhere at 10, 11 days. By that time, I'm giving them a little update over that first weekend about the open house or feedback or showings. Everybody was positive, whatever, if I didn't have offers or multiple offers. A lot of them will sell before I make it to the second weekend, or through that second week I tell them after that I feel like generally if we had good pace of traffic, it's gonna dive off the cliff. And most of the time I'm advising them, now I'm looking at, did anything sell?
Yeah, looking at what did sell, and did they come
Did
to our
anything
house?
list? And I love this one. I got it years ago from like a CRS class or something. I always tell people, think about it. You're like in the grocery store line. You're either in the front of the line about to check out, or while you're on the market, a bunch of people are breaking in front of you. And if a bunch of people are listing and breaking in front of you, or reducing their price and breaking in front of you, or have features you don't have, an extra garage, a pool, a extra couple hundred square feet, I don't know, they jazzed up their kitchen to be quartz and fancy and did glass showers that you didn't have. Like, there's things that you didn't have and or the price is better, or a combination of both, they're in the line in front of you. And if there's a lack of buyers buying when we look, it's not attrition to where we're right still at the front of the line, then we need an adjustment, usually in condition, price, or both, sometimes an incentive, agent bonuses, what have you, to move us to the front of the line. So I'm always kind of analyzing that, because I have seen a few recently, more recently, that when I looked, I said, hang tight. And I've had 2 or 3 that made it 30 to 40 days, luxury market, sell. They were pretty new properties. They felt like new, but competing with a lot of new. I just told them, hang on. We are still the best for our category, period. And we hung on because there was no reason, because they weren't in a hot fired life's going to end if I don't have this house sold tomorrow. And when you're in luxury price points, you got to talk about 50 and 100K drops, not 10,000 drops, right? So, and all of those worked out fine to just hold on. But a lot of times I'm just watching, or I already anticipated. All right, I let them do 650.99. I really wanted it at 650. Now's my shot. Let me talk them back into, this is the move. We need to make the move now. Before it gets a
and
little
that's
stale.
the point too, depending on how when she took it.
Right.
You know, if you said 650 and they wanted to test the market at 689, and you're like, crickets, right? Nothing's happening. That is her shot to go, okay, here's where we really needed to be, because time is the killer of all deals. I feel that. I don't like homes sitting on the market for 2 or 3 months. Yes, it could take one buyer, but for me, whose power are you giving? The seller power with more days on market, or the buyer? Right? Because when, and kind of like you were talking about in line, I always think about it when a buyer is hot and ready. Let's say you're working with a seasoned buyer, and they have looked at every house on the market in their price range, and they've been doing that for 2 or 3 months. Who's had a buyer for 2 or 3 months? All of us. That buyer, when Sharon or Linda list a property, when that buyer walks through my home, and I know that the feedback is, I don't want it, because they're the most seasoned, ready, willing, and able buyer. I like the first 10 buyers that walk through our home. I value their opinion higher than the buyer that just is thinking about getting into the market. They're fixing up their house. They're just looking. They're still trying to do the research to see, is this a good deal or not? Because if I'm a seasoned buyer and I walk into one of these properties, I've already got in my data bank and my memory what I'm competing against and what I saw, and is this a good deal or not? But if I'm a buyer where this is the first or second property I looked at, I really don't know if it's a good deal. I don't know. I'm not seasoned. And so that's where the conversation with the seller is. These first 10 or 15 buyers, they're seasoned buyers. They know the inventory, they've been in the market, they know what's going on. If they show up and don't buy, I'm a little more nervous for you than 2-3 weeks down the road when we get the unseasoned buyer that walks into the property. Does that make sense?
Do you guys ever take your sellers on a field trip? So that they can see the
That
competition?
completely backfired on me the one time I ever did it, and I was like, never gonna do it again.
Really?
Oh, my house is much better than those.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's defensive. Defensive, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, never do that again. I thought, oh, I'll show them why 2 or 3 houses are better than when they do lower their price. No,
They're delusional.
He didn't see it at all.
Interesting.
Yours like it?
I think it's handy when you have somebody who is trying to overprice or would like to overprice, or sometimes when, you know, honestly, I'm not 100% sure, and I'm going to go preview those houses, and I'll invite them to come with me. Hey, let's go look at this and see how you stack up compared to these other houses. I just did that. I have a listing coming up in Briar Creek if anybody's looking, with a basement, and one was for sale. In fact, it had just gone under contract with you, by the way, on Palm Bay. You don't know anything about it, but anyway. And fortunately, you know, we were able to squeeze in there and see that that house had a much better yard and a much better finished basement, and it was listed for $975. So that's why we were sort of like, okay, so that's probably not us, it's gonna close in a week or whatever. So I'm gonna keep an eye on that, but I think that was important for my client to understand the difference between her finished basement and something that was listed for $975.
Yeah.
Now that one's sold now, so that's not competition for me. So maybe appraisal wise, it's gonna matter a little bit, but it's not competition now. So if it was active at the time, I would probably price lower than I would price today, now that it's under contract, because I'm the only one.
Right, move to the front of
With
the
the
line.
big- yeah,
That's what I
move to the
said.
front of the line.
As long as you're in the front of the line.
Right, and that's
See,
why
we
we
say clear choice, so clear choice, front of the line, that's the same
the best
mentality.
house for that particular buyer at that particular time that your house is on the market. Whole package.
Right.
Pricing, location, lot, finishes, upgrades, the whole kit and caboodle.
Right.
Yeah.
And I will say feedback's interesting too, because a lot of people are like, nobody said my house was overpriced.
Well,
Now
that conversation.
and
I
that
was
conversation comes through, well, they didn't buy it, right? And a lot of buyers, until they're super interested, aren't going back and doing comps.
No.
The agent's not gonna waste their time
No,
price analysis. Look how hard it can be, you know, price analysis and trying to prove to you when their buyer ain't even interested. Why are they gonna spend their afternoon pricing your house and telling you whether it's right or not? It's not really they're self-invested in it, right?
Well, and
Now,
think of it-
occasionally it's so overpriced or so such an experienced buyer and agent that they will say, I don't want to hurt your feelings. That's how I try to approach it, right? I don't want to hurt your feelings, but of the competition, you're way behind, and I don't see you selling anytime soon based on the field that we just looked at. And that, you know, telling them they're overpriced for what they got.
Yeah.
So,
I was gonna say, you know, if I had a listing, and I had 10 different buyers come through, or 10 different agents, I never put weight on the feedback ever. I don't even care what the agent thinks, because they're literally there for 10 minutes. And so you almost really wanna prep your sellers too, when you have listings, that we're doing the hard work up front. You know, if we're doing 2-3 hours, plus you're hiring us for our value, our knowledge, and all of that goes into the experience, so we don't put a lot of weight on it. But anytime we give feedback, we say, hey, Joe, for the price, the buyer felt that it needed this. For the price, they felt like it needed, so it's always for the price when you give feedback. And I never released the feedback. I always wanted me to be in control. Every Friday, we Seller Fridays, Feedback Fridays. So every Friday we had feedback. We went through all of the feedback with the seller, because then I could control the outcome. And I would call somebody like Sharon, who is seasoned, hey, you didn't leave feedback, or you did leave feedback, Sharon, but I wanna pull more. I want her to talk about the price and the condition, because a lot of agents in North Carolina, they're just nice. Oh, it's beautiful, not for myself, not for my buyer. Okay, what does
Didn't
that
work.
mean?
didn't work.
Why?
Yeah.
Why is this not a clear choice? So you wanna go back to your feedback, get that out of her mouth, and go, well, you know, this agent actually said they were looking for a house with a bigger yard, or more updated bathrooms, and it came out of their mouth. But you gotta dig for that from the agent, because the agents think that it's gonna go to the seller. And what are they doing? Trying to be polite. Or they don't care, and they're like, I just saw 52 houses this weekend. Really nice, not for my buyer, and they're just trying to. So that
Get
feedback
through
is it's a waste of time, in my opinion. So that's
I try
just
to
something.
help the agents. I'm brutally honest to a fault.
I am too.
And
but
so
not
I'm more
everyone's like
likely
us.
to tell you your house sucks and just let you know. But for example, Ashley Wilson had one in Harrington Grove. What a disappointment. And I had high expectations for her, just like I would for you or for you, to not have a complete junker, even though sometimes I know, I mean, I had a couple recently.
You say that they're
But anyway,
junkers.
yeah, but I did, like I said. But this was in Harrington Grove. It had the cobwebs all over it and everything. And I just kind of laid it in there, because I thought I was helping her. I thought that was probably a conversation she should have been having with her clients, or maybe she was having with her clients. And
Do you call them and warn them?
No.
Sometimes I would send a text like, hey, do you want me to be brutally honest? Because I will. And I'm like, yeah, a lot of the agents want that.
Yeah. And some are so
so the fact of
offended.
the
Sometimes
matter-
are so offended.
Right.
It depends on
Well,
who
she
it
didn't
is.
give me any feedback back, so she might have been offended. But the fact of the matter is, get the damn cobwebs off the house already.
Right.
Right? I mean, that's where I'm video here. But anyway, so that's my.
Sorry, Ashley. Wilson.
Yeah, sorry, Ashley, if you're watching. But anyway, I find that I want that feedback, and then if I've got a super sensitive seller who I know is very proud of their house and cannot handle the feedback,
doesn't like
sometimes
the
I'll even
wallpaper.
say it in my listing appointment. I'm like, hey, can you handle the feedback? Or or not. And some people are like, yeah, I don't want to hear anything, just let me know when I have an offer.
Correct, yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Well, and you're very direct. I think you're that way too. It's like just very direct, but not everybody's very direct. Yeah, for sure. But going back to the pricing thing, so what we always did for years is, you know, every feedback Friday, so you're doing, you know, you're saying to your seller, hey, we've got launch week, we've got that first week, I want it under contract in that first week. That is the goal. And by week 2, we made an adjustment to get it under contract because, again, I believe time is the killer of all deals. I don't think it does really good, but I think you said, I follow my gut sometimes. Sometimes it just needs to sit and marinate just a little bit. But we always felt like if we got a lot of showings and no offers, we were probably 3 to 5% off value. If we got no showings, no offers, and we know how to sell homes, then a $500,000 property could be as much as 10% over market value. Because if you lower a house to $450,000, what's going to happen? Oh, all of a sudden you're in a whole different world. But if I lower it from $500,000 to $490,000,
That's nothing.
that's like walking by a store and having a 10% off sale. I'm not stopping for 10%,
No.
but a 50% off sale, I'm like, oh, maybe let me go see. So it's got to be enough to entice the buyer to take action. So sometimes it's moving into a whole different, you know, world. So, but that's all just based on experience of what's available to you. So you're just constantly analyzing.
Yes.
So do you all feel like you know how to price a house? Do you feel like you
No.
do you feel like you can do it? Did you learn anything, or did you just
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I always want to know. Do you guys find these helpful? Because as we do this, and especially the panel ones, I've loved so far because people have their different spins, yet they're successful. And hearing their different nuggets, I've learned so much.
Oh, me too.
How you did it and how Renee did it. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
this is pretty amazing. And the first few times I ever heard Tina talk, it just blew me away that I guess I just didn't even fathom that someone hired a realtor that didn't just tell them everything to do, because that's just how I'm wired. Like, I'm gonna just tell you what to do, we're gonna do it, you know, and that just works most of the time. But she was like, even like we had a seminar one time about price reductions and talking them into the price reduction. And so she's just, or it was a negotiation, that's what it was. You had a contract negotiating, and how she's so inclusive. She's like, well, we could do this and we could do this, and I'm like, no, just tell them to do this. And she goes, no, I just do it this way, but I get them there. And I'm like, yeah, I text them, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know? So, and so it's just,
they're in control, you know, they've got options, but they're definitely doing what I want.
but that's that was awesome just to see that sometimes laying it all out to them. But I guess because I've been burned by those things, like take the seller thing, oh, I'll show them one's clearly better than his. They'll agree to the price reduction. Did not work. You know, he just actually got more defensive. I'm like, oh Lord. So I think I've been burned and worn out that I just feel like, okay, let's just make this fast. This is what it is. This is why I think it. Do you agree? Do you see my logic? And they go, yeah. But I met with somebody right before doing this, which is interesting, kind of a luxury price again, probably 1.8 to 2. And I saw his office, Wharton School of Business, and I don't know, that's pretty fancy. And the wife, you know, just very polished and walking me through her house. But I even asked her at the end, she goes, what do I expect next from you? And this is before I could even wrap up. And I said, well, you're going to expect to see a report of information on where the pricing is and why I think it, which I've already kind of tiptoed through the house with them to hint, it isn't going to be what those 2.4s are asking new construction, because that isn't what you get on a 3-year-old house. So anyway, doing all that, and I said, I'm going to give you a bunch of detail, but it'll be real wordy, it'll be a lot of information. I said, so you might, if you're the type, just skip to the bullet points where I say I recommend this and why. It's a shorter summary. And she goes, oh yeah, I want to see that, not my husband. He's going to want to see all that. So knowing your personality types and who you're impressing and who you're bringing in, it has made a huge difference for me in winning the listing if I'm competing. That I just know, like, hey, I need to make sure I have a lot of detail, and then really the skip to the end summary, and getting them in the groove with me.
Yeah, I'm the skip to the end summary.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to say one other thing, which was using this kind of workshop to also work with your buyers. I just had a situation this week where we were putting an offer in on a house, and my client was willing to give a full price offer, right? But then it went into a multiple offer situation, and so I just had to remind them, and you can see how difficult it was for us to all have these ranges, is that the agent is trying to recommend a price in which an offer will be received. Okay, so it's really kind of I look at it as a recommendation when I'm telling my buyers, when they're looking at it, it's like a recommendation. This is not a science. I mean, if you had 5 appraisers out there, they would have 5 different answers as well. It is not a science. This price is just a recommended price in which the listing agent feels she can probably get an offer on the house. So don't let that distract you when you're trying to put your offer in on the house, because, you know, I mean, somebody else might have put 860 or 875 or whatever. And so then I actually had that conversation with my buyers and said, hey, if this house was priced, the one we put an offer on was 850. If this house was priced at 860, would you have offered, what would you have offered? And 860. If this house was priced at 870, would you have offered 870 or would you have offered 850? Well, I would have offered 870. Okay, so basically, your offer should not be based on what the listing agent has assigned to the price. It needs to be what the house is worth to you. And understand that everybody can have different ideas of what the value of the house is. It's not a science.
Yeah, I love that. And even like when this is for multiple offers, because they're like, well, I don't want to go over. Well,
Over what?
Over what? Right. Well, it's $850, but if I call you in a week and you know that it went under contract for $20,000 more,
Exactly.
$870, are you going to be so mad that you lost that offer?
So that's
for
what I say
$20,000?
too.
Yeah.
What is the number in which you're going to be comfortable when that house sells, and you're going to say that was not my house? If this house sells for $860, are you going to say, well, shit, I would have paid $860? Then you need to offer it $860. If it's $875 and you say no, $870 is my highest, and it closes at $875, because it will. It's exactly what it's going to close for. Is $5,000 more than you paid. So it's like getting
That's
Costco,
like
right?
It's
like a nickel and a dime.
It's like the pool house though we were talking about. You're like $35,000. You put $35 on it, but I come in as a buyer and I go, well, I know I just looked at pools and they're $200. I'm going to put $100 on it.
Yeah.
So your 35 is my 100.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't. There's no rhyme or reason.
Yeah. And I do tell buyers a lot who kind of come in with that I'm pre-qualified to this.
Yeah.
Because we do. I mean, 1/3 of our market right now is first-time buyers. We have a lot at 350 or 450 or 600 or 650 or whatever. I consistently ask them, was that a number that they just pulled and decided to run numbers on that because that's what they thought? Or did they find out the difference if they went 25 or 50 more? I said, sometimes you might want a gradient. And I try to get them with my lender pretty quickly and find a hook and a crook to do that so that they will. And whether they want to see that 25 or 50 more, I don't want it to be off-putting them. I say sometimes just run it, because sometimes we'll exhaust to your limit, or we hit your limit and something is just so much better than everything else, it's getting multiples. If you just knew 10 grand more and X per month more made at your house, wouldn't you want to be empowered to at least know it? Or no, you didn't want to do it.
Or what
just
is that?
know your numbers.
Yeah.
What if that $10,000 or $15,000 house had a new roof and a new HVAC,
Right.
or a renovated kitchen, and the second best choice,
Needed
you were
all
going to have
that.
to replace all that stuff, money out of pocket versus financing it in. So
Yeah.
it's like the bigger picture to keep their options open.
And I think people want to feel like they're doing what everybody else is doing. We're all like lemmings. We want to like do what the crowd's doing. So I say a lot that in the times we've been in a shorter supply chain market, when someone sees something that speaks to them that they physically feel good about living in, most people say, what's another 10, 20 grand? And when I say that to them, it relaxes them that it might be okay if they felt that way. Right? But before that, them and their mama and their brother and everybody's like, oh no, that's the list price, you don't go over the list price. But I don't get as much, but I like the language of, like, don't let the list price bother you. But a lot into feeling like it's pretty common today. Most people look at it this way. I have found, most people don't care if 10 or 20 grand, if it's a house they really like, and try to get them to get real comfortable with that idea in case we have to pull
You
that
don't
out.
have this book, which a lot of you guys probably do, exactly what to say for real estate agents. This will teach you how to talk like Tina and Sharon. And I did not know how to talk like them until I joined EXP, and I was listening to Tina talk, and so I started to talk a little bit more like that. But then this book sort of helped me, seal the deal as far as, bringing your clients to where you're trying to get them in their own words, right?
Just imagine if you bought this book and you
$10 or something.
Yeah, just imagine is
Just
one way to
imagine,
imagine.
yeah, right.
Just imagine if you bought this book and you could magically get all your buyers to write contracts on their first showing.
Does that sound reasonable?
That sounds reasonable.
Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Are we ready to move forward?
Yeah. Exactly.
What's
Alright.
that?
So get some prizes.
Yeah.
Anybody not enter to win needs to.
Ooh. I like that black. That's cool. What was that?
Yes.
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 Are you
Have you
filling it
not?
out now? You were supposed to fill it out before you got here, not after you got the answer.
Earlier because I didn't have time to do it, so I didn't fill it out.
Okay, are you going to put your name in here or not?
I mean, I can.
Okay,
I thought
good.
that was
Do it,
cheating.
do it.
Well, if the
we're not-
answers don't matter,
We
it's just
weren't
being
looking for
present.
answers. We were looking that people did something and
Okay.
put
Oh.
something down and got their name in there. So I figured if I at least made you write down prices,
Well, I have
it
more
might
pages of
be
notes.
somebody that actually
good.
did something. Because some of y'all might have just looked up Zillow and wrote it down. I know y'all.
That's right. That's true. You know some
What is the
did.
prize, Sharon?
The prizes are pick a Stanley Cup or this
Nice.
Target gift card.
That's cool. I want to see that.
Got one more what coming?
Grab it.
Tickets in our little tumbler. We got a little cool tumbler. I forgot about that.
I know that's a cool one. I've never seen this one.
Ooh, I like this one.
Fancy.
I know. All right, fun. Y'all each pick one. All right, go ahead. I'm gonna move them around. I wished them. Okay.
Sarah Hopper.
Amelia.
I didn't cheat.
Look, you're lucky. You just got in.
Gift card or Stanley Cup?
It's a tough choice. Doctrine? How much is the gift card?
Yeah, how much is the gift card?
Huh? The value? Oh, there you go. So you're either shopping for a cup or shopping for whatever you want. I know. I know.
Oh, I love it.
She's an indecisive person.
Yes, she is.
Yeah. Here you go. Which one do you want? Oh, cup or
Quick prize.
the $50?
Oh, I guess the $50.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. What do we want to do next? We're doing these every 2 weeks in general, except for once in a while for the holidays. You guys got a topic that they're struggling with? Yes, no, maybes? I've had 2 people terminating this week claiming material fact, and they weren't material facts. So I don't know if you guys want to cover some of that stuff, because I've been learning a little bit of brush up on some of those things.
Maybe do negotiations.
Yes.
Well, because the contract is that new government compliance section, is that what they're using?
No. No, they're
Okay.
actually not.
Interesting.
One's talking about radon, one's talking about airplanes that aren't in flight
How about-
paths. And one was talking about a clue report that was done, some repairs were done from a flood in 2020.
I think radon's worth talking about in general,
Yep.
because I think that as a newer agent, I was nervous about radon, and even if it was mitigated, and now I don't care as long as it's mitigated.
Right.
And
All
so
right.
being able to talk to your buyers about that is
So
important.
we can talk about pitfalls, challenges, things that buyers might be scared of, and how we kind of learn about them and what we know about them. Because again, I think as long as we can keep panels up, with panels of people, we all come from a different war story. I've had 2 different houses, one on the list side, one on the buy side, that had major fires. Neither were disclosed. One, I was a new agent and nobody told me, and I didn't know to ask. I just thought he renovated his house. And they found out after they moved in and whether that was a problem. And then years later, a different story, and how the real estate commission changes over time also. Whether it was a problem when my buyers bought, and it didn't come up until the neighbors told them when they moved in. So sometimes it doesn't always come up in a clue report, or maybe the buyer's insurance company doesn't pull that or make a big deal to it to the client, so they don't find out until the neighbors say, "Oh yeah, half the house burnt down a couple years ago," and then they're like, "What?"
I think impervious ground is
Renee?
another.
Impervious,
Because
yeah.
I have a friend, they bought their house and found out when they went to go finish a bunch of
Something,
empty
get another
space on their
permit.
floor,
Yep.
that the prior owners had not closed the permits on the pool or the pool house that they put in because they were over the impervious ground. So they couldn't get new permits on their upstairs.
And
Big year-long lawsuit.
I was gonna say a lawsuit because they did not properly disclose on the permits portion, I assume.
Yes.
Yes.
And they were aware of it too.
Well, of
And
course they were.
their agent was aware of it.
Oh, I got a great story of power lines being beside a house in Burton's Creek, and a big old thicket of trees beside those power lines when the people bought it, so they didn't care. But what we didn't know was the sellers were notified that whole thicket was going down and another power line was going in, and there used to be ribbons around all of those trees. The seller cut them all off and sold us the house.
Oh.
With bigger power lines? Is that
Huh?
Martin Farm Road?
No, but very close to that. It was on Kissing Court,
Oh, really?
right behind it.
Yeah, I know.
Yep. So things like that happen. That's where we need to talk about.
How about when my seller was so mad at a buyer that the buyer basically they wanted to stay in the house. Well, specific performance they can't because
Right.
they couldn't back out, so they lost that case. They crazy glued every single light bulb in the house to the socket. So then they had to replace all the lights because once the light bulb went out, you couldn't get the socket out. So not fun.
Stories that could be in a book.
Yeah.
That's for the next one. So
But if you really don't like someone, just bring your crazy glue
yes.
all over.
Kelly's got an interesting one right now that was under contract, North Raleigh, 700, little dated but decent, on an acre. The Apollo water system that does your heat back in the 80s in the attic exploded, to which she found out once the entire house and all the ceilings had fallen through. And they're still waiting for all of the insurance numbers to come in. But the buyer has the right under the contract to still buy the house and claim the insurance money and fix the house. But Kelly might could speak about that on our next one.
Oh, you're on the panel.
So you guys need these stories. Stories
Right.
sell because you're telling what things have happened,
Yes.
what experiences, whether they're your own, adopt them as your own, or stories you've heard around the water cooler.
Scaring
and
the
all
crap
that.
out of the buyer. That's our
and
job.
tell them the things you know so that you know, like, these are things that have happened and how I'll look out for you, because that is where, given the SNAR thing, you will have value to people when you've got the experience and the know-how. And Kelly's looking like a hero to these people because she's in there meeting everybody and figuring out that she feels like if they just take the money, they're going to get $200 more grand for their house. So they might want to let due diligence pass and these buyers walk because they're not going to have information by the time due
right.
diligence ends.
True.
So
Right.
anyway, strategic ideas and thoughts and all these things, you always got to think and be strategic, not just like
And
let
then
your mouth
ask.
start running.
And then ask, yeah. Then ask others because
Yeah.
everybody's brain works differently, and sometimes it's hard to have those, strategic
Yeah.
thoughts. Sometimes, right?
Sometimes it's a poker or a chess game,
Yeah.
not just
Yeah.
a straight move.
And you miss something, and that one thing can be so important.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Love it.
Everybody enjoying this?
Yay.
Okay.
Every 2 weeks,
Yeah.
another one to put on the calendar.
Yes.
I love